Good rising, brethren. This is Big Judah coming to you guys from California. Before I begin, give all praises to the Most High Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother, who is wisdom, who is the Holy Spirit. Acknowledgement to Yahweh Shai. Pray that the Most High blesses this lesson today, gives more knowledge and understanding of the events of the past, in order to understand the events that are currently happening on the earth, so they may understand what is soon to come on the earth. We're going to be getting into a lesson today showing you why the Abominable Church has been hiding so many of our books. You're going to get confirmation that these books are actually accurate based off of historical documentation. They've gone out of their way to hide the lands, to hide the inheritance that the Most High had already deemed before the foundations of the earth. Along with those inheritances comes curses for taking over someone else's lands. That's been one of the main things that's been hidden when we start getting to these secret archives and the hiding of history. We're going to be taking a look at this book again, The Life of Columbus. And I find it pretty ironic that this man wrote, or there's a whole lot of information of things that he was experiencing, but the fact that the Abominable Church did not want this information out, they did not go off of a lot of first-hand accounts, primary sources, but they just made up their own interpretation of the events of this man's life. You'll understand why, because they couldn't use the primary source. They couldn't use what Columbus was saying himself, because it would confirm what was going to happen here in the end, and it would not confirm what the narrative that the church wanted to spread worldwide. Again, this is the cover. Here, if you want to look it up, History of the Life and Voyages of Christopher Columbus by Washington Irving. And we're going to be reading volume 2 today. But before we do that, hold on real quick. We need to review Jubilees chapter 8, because you're going to get a lot of confirmation in the historical books that actually Jubilees 8 is very accurate. Talking about the inheritance of, Japheth getting the cold lands, Ham getting the hot lands, all right, and Shem getting hands that are neither hot nor cold, like the best lands, the best weather. Okay, let's take a look at 26. Actually, start at 25. And for Japheth came forth the third portion beyond the river, Tina to the north of the outflow of its waters, and it extends northeasterly to the whole region of Gog, and to all the country east thereof. And it extends northerly to the north, and it extends to the mountains of Kelt towards the north, and towards the sea of Mauk, and it goes forth to east of Gidri, as far as the region of the waters of the sea. And it extends until it approaches the west of Farah, and it returns towards Aphareg, and it extends easterly to the waters of the sea of Merat. And it extends to the region of the river Tina in a northeasterly direction until it approaches the boundary of its waters towards the mountain Rapha, and it turns around towards the north. This is the land which came forth for Japheth and his sons, as the portion of his inheritance, which he should possess for himself and his sons, for their generations forever, 5 great lands, and a great land in the north. Now this is the main thing right here at the end. But it is cold, and the land of Ham is hot, and the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but it is of blended cold and heat. That's the main point right there. All right, the Japheth lands are cold, Ham's are very hot, And the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but it is of a blended cold and heat. What you're going to see is that Shem's lands are supposed to be, like I said, the best temperate, the best climate. A little bit of both, like seasons. All right. Now we're going to get into the book here. All right. Let's see, page 407. The things that Columbus was seeing on his third voyage when he actually went further south. Now, of course, he was told to go further south to look for the natives that look more like Hamites, and we were talking about that on the last video. Okay, so you're looking. When you get on that certain equatorial line, that's where you're going to find the best resources, and you're going to find the people that actually look like Hamites are the ones that look similar, but they're not Hamites. And we all know that. We don't have to kind of go into all of that. You guys know all that. But he talks about that right here. He's going to talk about the Hamites and how they are different. Okay? Here we go. He noticed also the difference of climate, vegetation, and people of this part of the New World from those under the same parallel in Africa. There, the heat was insupportable. So now we're talking about the land of Ham. The heat, okay, is insupportable. The land, parched and sterile. The inhabitants were black, with crisped wool, ill-shapen in their forms, and dull and brutal in their natures. So he's right here describing the land of Ham, as well as the Hamites, as well as their how they looked, as well as their character. So they had a hot land, okay? The heat was insupportable. The land parched and sterile. The inhabitants were black, with crisp wool, ill-shapen in their forms, and dull and brutal in their natures. So that goes exactly still with what you saw in Jubilees. A hot, deserty land, and he's describing the people that live there. And that goes with the portion that they were given for their inheritance. Okay? Here, now he's on the other side of the world, on the same parallel. He goes, okay, so he's right what he's seeing over here in the New World. Here, on the contrary, although the sun was in Leo, he found the noontide heat moderate, the mornings and evenings fresh and cool, the country green and fruitful, and covered with beautiful forests. So now he's on the other side of the world, and he's still under, the sun is in Leo, so it's supposed to be super hot, I guess, but it's the weather is totally different over there because he knew that he had found the promised lands. Okay, let's continue. Let's see. So, sun was in Leo. He found the noontide heat moderate, the mornings and evenings fresh and cool, the country green and fruitful, and covered with beautiful forests. The people fairer even than those in the lands he had discovered further north, having long hair, with well-proportioned and graceful forms, lively minds, and courageous dispositions. All this in the latitude so near to the equator, he attributed the superior altitude of this part of the world, by which it was raised into a more celestial region of the air on turning northward. So he's actually going to I'm not sure if it's in this section, but he believes that the Earth is actually pear-shaped, and that this region of the New World is actually elevated as opposed to the rest of the world. And, the cold section. Well, I'll read it a little bit more. Let me continue. So he already is making a difference between what you're going to find here in America, as you can see here with the statues. When the Americans are wearing the feathers, like the Quetzal feathers and everything else over here, and then the Hamites over there in Africa. And as we talked about in the last video in Amos, about how they look the same, but they're different. But they've had to push that narrative that everyone of color came from one place. Everyone of color came from Africa. But Columbus already knew that there were people of color already over here. He was already told that. So that means other people knew that as well. But when he gets over here, he needs to find people that look dark, just like the Hamites, They look a little similar, but that's where you're going to find the best resources. Okay, hold on. All right, so you already see the difference between you're in a certain parallel, the equatorial line, and on one half of the Earth, the weather is horrible. On the other part, same equatorial line, the land is actually like a paradise. Now we're on 408. The Gulf of Paria. He had found the circle described by the North Star. The current of the sea also increased in velocity, wearing away, as he has already been remarked, the borders of the continent and producing by its incessant operation the adjacent islands. This was a further confirmation of the idea that he had ascended in going southward and descended in returning northward. Aristotle had imagined that the highest part of the earth and the nearest to the skies was under the Antarctic pole. Other sages had maintained that it was under the Arctic. Hence, it was apparent that both conceived one part of the earth to be more elevated and noble and nearer to the heavens than the rest. So, see, they actually already believed there was a certain area that was already elevated, closer to the Most High. And it would only make sense that that would actually be the land of promise, the land that was given to Shem. They were just making guesses as to where it was, but they were pretty sure that it existed. Okay? So again, hence it was apparent that both conceived one part of the earth to be more elevated and noble and nearer to the heavens than the rest. They did not think of this eminence being under the equinoctial line, observed Columbus, because they had no certain knowledge of this hemisphere, but only spoke of it theoretically and from conjecture. So they didn't know about the lands, but they knew it was somewhere. Okay, and they pretty much were just guessing. But check this part out. But as usual, he assisted his theory by Holy Writ. So see, they can come up with theories and then make it seem like it's a fact because they wrote it down and they said that this is what it is. Their opinions have just been made fact by themselves. You see that, and that's exactly what's been going on this whole time. Just like they have all these theories, the Big Bang Theory, but just because they can write it down and say that that's what we're going to teach, and that's what it is, and that's what people listen to. They talk about the Bering Straits theory. They're the ones that can just make it like a holy writ. This is what it is. This is what we believe. That's what everyone's going to be taught. Because the earth was given into the hands of the wicked, and that's what they've been allowed to do. Let's continue. As usual, he assisted his theory by Holy Writ. The sun, when God created it, he observes, was in the first point of the Orient, or the first light was there. That place, according to his idea, must be here, in the remotest part of the East. All right. So they're already figuring it out. He already knows exactly where he's at. He's found the Holy Lands. All right, let's continue. All right. Get into some more good stuff right here. Where the ocean and the extreme part of India meet under the equinoctial line, and where the highest point of the earth is situated. He supposed this apex of the world, though of immense height, to be neither rugged nor precipitous, but that the land rose to it by gentle and imperceptible degrees. The beautiful and fertile shores of Paria were situated on its remote borders, abounding, of course, with those precious articles which are congenial with the most favored and excellent climates. As one penetrated in the interior of the gradually ascended, the land would be found to increase in beauty and luxuriance, and in the exquisite nature of its productions, until it terminated in the summit under the equator. There he imagined to be the noblest and most perfect place on earth, enjoying from its position an equality of nights and days and a uniformity of seasons. So now we have seasons here. Now he already's figuring this stuff out. If you get deeper in, this is gonna be the best place on the earth. Okay, uniformity of seasons. They don't get that in the other lands. Remember, so they know this information. They know that Ham has the hot lands, right, and Japheth has the cold lands. They don't have seasons. They knew that Shem was given lands of the seasons. They have seasons, hot nor cold. Okay, so they already knew that. So when he's talking about now we got a place that has seasons, they know exactly where they're at. So, and a uniformity of seasons, and being elevated into a serene and heavenly temperature, above the heats and the colds, the clouds and the vapors, the storms and tempests which deform and disturb the lower regions. Now he's talking about the lower regions being the lands of Ham and the lands of Japheth. Right there. So he knows exactly where he's at. He knows he's not over in China. He knows that he's found the lands, the holy lands. Watch. So again, that's really important that you guys get that right there. So again, above the heats and colds, okay, lands of Ham, lands of Japheth, the clouds and vapors, okay, the storms and tempests, which deform and disturb the lower regions. It would only make sense that they got the lower regions because they weren't of the chosen seeds. So the Most High is not, not going to give them the best. He's going to give that to Shem. And right here he's referring to them as the lower regions. But see, that's why they have to lie and make it sound like nobody was here, and that this was just open land for anyone to take, because there was a difference. People have always, that's why they've always pushed we're all equal, we're all the same. We're not all equal, we're not all the same. And the Most High does play favorites. He does have favorites. And he expressed that even in the inheritance that he gave the people. So again, in a word here, in a word, here he's supposed to be situated the original abode of our first parents, the primitive seat of human. Well, I'm going to continue right there. These beautiful lands right here, okay? All right, beautiful innocence and bliss, okay? The Garden of Eden, or terrestrial paradise. So he knew what he had found just by the climates alone. He already knew that it couldn't be over there, where he originated, because it doesn't even fit the lands of Shem. Okay, so he knew the terrestrial paradise would have to be over here. It would have to be in a certain land with a certain climate. Okay, he imagined this place according to the opinion of the most eminent fathers of the church to be still flourishing, possessed of all its blissful delights, but inaccessible to mortal feet, excepting by divine permission. All right, so these guys, these theologians, the most learned of these in the Abominable Church, they knew that this land here will still be flourishing because they're not over here. It says possessed of all its blissful delights. So it has everything that, everything that needs to support the people has been over here growing untouched, all right, untainted. But then they know why, because it's inaccessible to mortal feet. It's inaccessible to the Gentiles, excepting by divine permission. And the divine permission came in the Book of Mormon, all right, 1 Nephi 13, when we messed up and he brought Columbus over here. He sent the Spirit to lead him over here. It's all making sense. It's all connecting. All right. From this height, he presumed, though, of course, from a great distance, proceeded the mighty stream of fresh water which filled the Gulf of Paria, okay, and sweetened the salt ocean in its vicinity, being supplied by the fountain mentioned in Genesis as springing from the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. Such was the singular speculation of Columbus, which he details at full length in a letter to the Castilian sovereigns, citing various authorities for his opinions, among which are St. Augustine, St. Isidore, and St. Ambrosius, and fortifying his theory with much of that curious and speculative erudition in which he was deeply versed, It shows how his ardent mind was heated by the magnificence of his discoveries. Shrewd men and the coolness of quietude of ordinary life, and in let me see here, I'll read a little bit more. And in these modern days of cautious and sober fact, may smile at such a reverie, but it was countenanced by the speculations of the most sage and learned of those times. And if this had not been, could we wonder at any sally of the imagination in a man placed in the situation of Columbus? He beheld a vast world rising, as it were, into existence before him, its nature and extent unknown and undefined, as yet a mere region of conjecture. Every day displayed some new feature of beauty and sublimity. Island after island, whose rock, he was told, were veined with gold, whose groves teemed with spices, or whose shores abounded with pearls. Interminable ranges of coast, promontory beyond promontory, stretching as far as the eye could reach. Luxuriant valleys sweeping away into a vast interior, whose distant mountains, he was told, concealed still happier lands and realms of still greater opulence. When he looked upon all this region of golden promise, it was with the glorious conviction that his genius had called it into existence. He regarded it with the triumphant eye of a discoverer. Had not Columbus been capable of these enthusiastic soarings of the imagination, he might, with other sages, have reasoned calmly and coldly about the probability of a continent existing in the West. But he would never have had the daring enterprise to adventure in search of it until the unknown realms of the ocean. So we're going to stop right there for right now. See, now you kind of understand why all these other books have been hidden, because they were getting confirmation of even all these other hidden books by the things that Columbus was being shown. It's kind of hard to sit there and let's see, give your opinion and make these kinds of claims about, everything happened here, everything was here, when they don't even understand, they don't even know about these other lands. The Most High gave, Japheth and Ham their lands. He didn't say that all these things are going to be happening in their lands. He says a lot of these things are going to be happening in the lands of the Most High, the lands of Shem. They hadn't been there, so they were forced to guess about this noble region that had been raised up, that had been higher than other places, that had been raised up to be closer to heaven, a much better climate. And now they were getting an opportunity to actually visit this place. So they needed to control the narrative. So they got rid of a lot of Columbus's writings, or make it very difficult to get to them. They get rid of a lot of the books, such as, Jubilees, which really goes into the inheritance. The Bible really does not go into how the lands were divvied up, who got what, the description of the lands that were given to each of the children of Noah. So you're left to conjecture, which is exactly what the churches have been doing, just giving you conjecture. But by Holy Writ, they make it a fact. They can do that. They can say, well, this is our opinion, so therefore we're going to write it and we're going to declare it, and everyone's going to have to listen to it. But Columbus was well aware that when he got over here, these lands matched the scriptures. These lands over here matched the inheritance of Shem. And he also described the inheritance of Ham, and he also described the inheritance of Japheth, with the cold lands and the hot lands. So now you understand why all this information has to have been hidden. Now we know why there's all of these secret archives, because I'm sure there's many other people that were writing a lot of the same information, giving more confirmation of these other books. And now we have all these people sitting here telling them, don't read anything else. Just read the King James Version of the Bible, and that's it. When the King James Version is still, King James all he did was translate the Bible. They had already decided which books were good, which ones were bad, which ones you could read, which ones you could read by Holy Writ, okay, with Constantine, over 1,000 years before that. And as you can see, why they would hide some of this information. They make sure to take it out, because then they could, then you realize that with coming over and taking these lands, you're taking the Most High's chosen people into captivity. By taking these these lands don't belong to them, they are going to be getting a curse that was already agreed upon by Noah and his children, and they had to hide all that information. So now it makes sense as to what's happening today. Most High said He was going to give us, once these the Book of War and the Bible, the two sticks, come back together, that was going to show you proof that Most High is already bringing this time period, this era, to an end. And as we started praying about a month ago, you can see now everything starting to accelerate even faster. All right, brethren. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother, who is wisdom, who is the Holy Spirit. Acknowledgement to Yahweh Shai. Shalom.